Hi folks, we're picking up the tutorial where we made this office space and we have our door which slides back and forth, or will slide back and forth eventually. And one of the first things we might want to do is just a bit of organization. So if I double click where the name is in the details, I can actually say glass door instead of window. And then if I folder all of these, that would be great. Let's see, I've got all of these other items. Let's go ahead and put them under lighting. Chairs. These other items can go in office. Okay, and then we have a much easier time selecting objects and such. So we have the door here, but it could be handy to be able to see a little bit more detail. So we're going to take a prop and I'm going to grab this small corner frame and put it into the scene. And then I'm going to scale it quite a bit and scale it in x 0.1, so it's very, very thin. I'll try and put it at about door handle height. There we go. And then I'll make a copy of this. It's actually right where the other one is. I'm going to have to change my grid just a little bit so I can get it so it's looking like it's in the right place. Actually, it looks like this one is a little bit in the glass, so I'm going to try and pull that one out. There we go. Now, these corner frames, which are the door handles, I'm going to put them into the folder. Let's rename our folder. So I've renamed it to glass. And if I then take these two frames and drop them onto the glass door, they are now children of the glass door, which means if the glass door moves, those handles will go with them. Great. Okay, so I'm going to want to slide the door in this direction. And that, for me, is the red, which is x. So it's going to start at -50, and I'm just going to write this down. We're starting at -50, and we're going to be moving it to somewhere about, say, 80. Okay. All right. So I'm now going to go through these steps, and the first of which is I need my place actors menu. So if I don't have that up, I'm going to go to Window, Place Actors, and turn that on. And there's a box trigger. And I'm going to place the box trigger right here. Actually, we want our door to be back at the -50. And I want to make this box trigger big enough, so I'm going to hit R, select it and hit R so I can scale it up. I want it to be big enough that when I collide with that, that I'm not too close to the door. So we're going to try that out. Okay. Now I'm going to go over here and I'm going to make sure that my trigger is selected. And I'm going to go over here to the list of world blueprints. And I'm going to open level blueprint. That might take a second. Wow, that is taking a little bit longer than usual. Okay, and it's opened it on my other window, so I'm just going to pull that in. So this is where we do all of our scripting, all of our blueprints. In 4.27, there used to be a couple commands here, which were event on tick and event begin play. Those have gone away, and I'll be teaching you about those things a little bit later. But the nice thing to know is I can just right click in here and I'll get a content sensitive selection, which means because I have my trigger box selected, it's going to suggest things for my trigger box. And so the first thing we're going to do is add event for trigger box, and we're going to add collision. And please make sure that you're doing this for the trigger box. Add on actor begin overlap, and we'll do another one. Add on actor end overlap. So what this is going to say is when something overlaps with the trigger box, it's going to make something happen. And I can right click and drag in order to move the window. Okay, so now we need to give it something to do. So I'm going to right click again, and I'm going to scroll all the way to the bottom, and I'm going to say add timeline. That was a little strange. And I should give that timeline a name, and in this case, I'm going to call it door move. And what we're going to do is when the actor begins overlap with the trigger box, we're going to tell it to play. And we're just going to drag that pin into the other pin. It's almost like connecting a wire in a circuit board or doing something with Arduino. We're going to take this one and we're going to plug it into reverse. Now, if I've done that, now I need to actually give the timeline information. I need to actually set it up as a timeline. So let's double click it. When I double click it, it's going to open a new window. I have the event graph, and now I have this timeline, and I'm going to hit plus track, and I'm going to add a vector track. And a vector track will be an X, Y, and a Z. I'm only going to be worrying about the X for me, which was the red, which is this direction for moving the door. So I'm going to hide and lock Y and Z. I'm then going to right click and say add key to X. It doesn't really matter where I do it. Add key to X. And then I'm going to select the first one, and I'm going to type in a value of 0. And I'm going to give it that first coordinate location of -50. So value -50. I'm then going to select the other one and say 2 for 2 seconds and give it the value of 80. Now my graph is going to change and it might not fit on my screen, so I can say zoom to fit horizontal and zoom to fit vertically, and now it's going to reproportion that graph to fit. Now we're going to be telling it to set an X and a Y, so I'm going to select the door, and I'm just going to plug in a keyframe for the Y and one for the Z. Because if I don't plug one in, it'll just be 0, and then the door will move into a different position. So now I'm going to hide the X. Let's open up the Y. Let's add a key to the Y, and it doesn't matter where it is because there's only going to be one value, so it'll stay that value the entire time. Or I could just say 0. So it's going to be 240. And then I'm going to unlock the Z, and I'll create a key for Z. And that one's going to be 10. And I'm just getting that from down here. And that's because these are the details because I have the door selected. Okay, so now I can go back to the event graph. And so this is a timeline that is going to run, or it's going to play when I tell it to play, or when actor begin overlap tells it to play. But I have to actually connect it to my door. So I have my door selected, and if I right click in here, I can say set actor location. Now, because I have my door selected, it's going to automatically include as a target the door. And I'm going to pull this update off and plug it into the set actor location. And what's going to happen is whenever the timeline is running, it's going to update this command repeatedly, like many times per second. And so we're going to pull this new track and plug it in here. And this new track, if I actually go into my timeline, this new track is something that I could rename door position. I could even spell it properly while we're at it. And then if I go back to my event graph, you can see door position. So you can have many different tracks on a single timeline. So it's going to, well, why don't we just compile and save? So now it should work. I'm going to pull it off to the side. We also need to make sure that our door is movable. So if I scroll to the top, right now it's static. So if I tried to move it, I would get an error. Let's say movable, which also caused the handles to be movable. So let's go ahead and hit play. And let's walk into the trigger and the door opens. And when I walk away, the door closes. I can walk in, I can walk through, and then the door will close. Okay, so that's all pretty simple. Basically, it's on actor begin overlap, plugging this in, and on actor end overlap. So wherever it is, it's going to reverse. And you want to do reverse instead of reverse from end, because if I was to walk into the door and then walk away, it's going to start closing wherever it is. And if I was to say reverse from end, it would jump to the end of the animation, which would be the door in full open. So it would glitch and then it would start closing. Okay, we should also save everything here. One thing I did not do in class was if you right click these keyframes, you should be able to say auto. There we go. So what that is going to do is it's going to mean that it starts slowly and then accelerates and then slows down. It might not be a perceivable difference, but it's a little bit of a more realistic motion. It speeds up and then slows down. It eases into the stop and it eases into the movement. Okay, so that's how we do our blueprints, and that's how we get our doors moving. So congratulations, you've just made an interactive video game. The other thing that we might want to do while we're here is if I go to all classes and type reflection, there's a sphere reflection. And let's see, let's pull this up just a little bit. And what that's going to do is if I have any reflective surfaces in the environment, like high gloss metal, hold down the Alt key, let's drag it out, another one over here. Or if this was a highly polished surface, these capture spheres are going to help me pre-calculate any reflections for static objects and utilize those reflections in here. I don't think I have anything that's super high gloss. Let's see if I have anything that is polished. This might have a little bit, but that's more for light. That's pretty polished marble. So there we go. So this is getting that reflection from this sphere. I wonder if I was to delete that, if it would still be getting it. Well, it looks like it's a little bit better quality having that in there. And typically if I do a build and the lighting quality is preview, typically it works a little bit better if it's higher. Let's build lighting only. Pretty quick, and I'm going to get better reflections now as a result. So when I go ahead and press play, that reflection that I'm getting is all due to those spheres and their placement. And having 4 of them, one for each of these sort of quadrants, gives a much better fidelity to the scene. Okay. That is our quick tutorial to introduce blueprints. I'll be introducing some other ways to use blueprints in the near future, but hopefully this was a useful video for those of you who aren't in class or those of you who want a refresher. Don't forget to save everything and let me know if you have any questions.